Well, hi again, folks. Well, this is part 2 of my series of 2 videos on the Drop Riffle Sluice. If you want more information or to watch the video on the operation of the sluice, you might check with the first part of this. This one is designed mostly for those folks who don't have a lot of building skills or a lot of tools, and it takes them more step by step on how to build one of these. Well, traditionally in a drop riffle sluice, a solid board is taken and has grooves cut in it with either a table saw or a router similar to these. Now this kind of limits the depth to only maybe about a ½ inch deep, so that you can keep the strength so it doesn't break on you. So what we're going to do with this one is go exactly in the opposite direction, and we're going to add material instead of taking it away. Okay, this picture will give you kind of an idea of the direction we're going to go. We're going to start out with a baseboard, which is right around a ½ inch thick, maybe a little thicker, ½ inch even. And then we're going to take 3/4 inch square dowels and glue to it. Now you can use ½ inch or ½ inch. You can mix these up any way you want to. And then we're going to glue a piece of 3/4 inch pine to the baseboard as well for a slick plate. Well, the dowels that I'm using for this project are 3/4 inch square dowels. You can buy these at your Home Depot or Lowe's stores. And as you can see here, for a hardwood one, they run you about $2.98, maybe a little cheaper if you get in the pine. Well, the reason that we're going with the deeper troughs by using the 3/4 inch dowels is, if you saw in the first video there, that once the gold drops into the bottom of these troughs, it stays there, and it makes these things a real gold catcher. And once the gold falls down inside, it's out of the current and has no way of getting washed out of the grooves again. So this is kind of a little safety factor that we're kind of building in here. Well, to cut all of these dowels the same length, you'll need some way to do it. An easy way to do it is use one of these miter boxes like this one from Home Depot, or you can buy one from Harbor Freight for about $11.99. Or the alternative is to do like I did and build your own. You can do like I did and go ahead and build your own. I used a piece of 1x6 for the base and a 1x3 for the two sides. One of the things that you can do with the homemade one is you can make the arms just a little bit longer on it. This enables you to put a stop block on there, and so that you can make all of the cuts exactly the same length. And this is an important thing for making the riffles on this sluice. Yep, a perfect fit. Just what you need for making the riffles on your sluice. Well, for the baseboard on my 6-inch sluice, I used a piece of just plain old cedar fencing. It's exactly 5½ inches wide, and the piece of pine that I'm going to use for the slick plate is exactly 5.5 inches wide, so that works out pretty well. And once you get sand the fuzz off from it, then it's not too bad looking wood there, and it does a nice job. Your local Home Depot has these racks of hardwood that you can buy, and you can buy a baseboard in 1/4 inch in a hardwood here for not too much, and you can buy it in about a 6 or an 8 inch width here as well. Now you can also buy a sheet of this 1/4 inch plywood, and they will make a couple of cuts on it for free, but the problem is the plywood tends to split and crack after a while. I have found that over a period of time that around 10 to 12 inches is a good length to have for your slick plate. So that's the length that I make mine now. You'll also have to determine the exact length that you want your overall sluice to be, and so you'll know how many of the little dowels to cut. I usually, for my recirculation, figure 22 to 24 inches long. For all of my glue ups, I like to use Titebond Ultimate Type 3 glue. This is waterproof, and once you glue 2 pieces of wood together, they are there to stay. And you'll usually break the wood before you'll break the bond on the glue. So this is a good one to use for this sort of thing. You can also use it to paint the edges of the wood and on the end grain to help waterproof it. Well, I use clamps to hold things together, but if you don't have any, you can just put a weight on it, like maybe a small bucket of sand or a gallon of water or something like that. But need a little pressure on there to kind of hold the 2 pieces together. One thing I like to do is put a final bead right on the corner there. And it's also a good idea to take your little brush with some glue on it and paint the end grain here, and that'll waterproof it very well. For the water bar, I usually use just a piece of 2x4. This normally gives me plenty of support for the 3/4 inch T that's going to go through there. Then you want to measure and find the center of the board on there so that you'll know about where to mark it for drilling. I usually like just about a 1/2 inch of space between the water bar and the slick plate. And I made this little tool with a T and a plug. Drill a hole through the center and put a number 6 screw part way through there, and that gives you a good little tool to mark the center to where you can drill a hole. Well, what I use for drilling the hole is a 1 5/16 inch Forstner bit, or you can use a hole saw as well. I usually do this in 2 steps, but you can do it in just drill it all the way through if you want. Next, I drill a pilot hole for the hole saw. This requires a 1/4 inch bit for this. I next use a 1 1/16 inch hole saw to drill all the rest of the way through. This gives me the right diameter for the 3/4 inch tubing that's going to come in from the back. As you can see, this gives you kind of a 2-stage hole, but if you don't want to go the expense of buying another hole saw, you can just drill the big hole all the way through. Well, for the side rails, I usually like to use some of this 1/2 inch cedar for mine, but you can use that, buy that 1/2 inch hardwood from Home Depot to make them. And if you like kind of a little thinner look on the side boards there. Well, this will give you kind of an idea of what it'll look like with a little thicker side rails on it. You can use some about 1x4s, and that should work out quite nicely. And they're also cheaper than buying the hardwood too, if that makes a difference. Well, now's the time to start gluing up all those little blocks you've been cutting out. You'll have to determine how wide of a groove that you want in between them. I usually go 5/8 of an inch or 3/4. The wider means that it will collect the gold much easier and quicker, but it also means that you will have more cons to sort through in the end. One of these little things collects about a cup of cons, so it's not bad. Anyway, you can use clamps like I do here, or you can just put some kind of weights on the top of it to help hold it down to the board. You can just do these 1 or 2 at a time if you want, and take your time at it, or you can do it all at once, whatever works best for you. Well, for some of you who have access to a table saw, you may want to cut this little 45-degree angle on some of your riffles. This will give the gold a place to kind of scoot back up under and kind of get out of the water currents a little bit better. On the Waterbar, I start out with a 1/8 inch bit and then enlarge it from that. I run a 600 gallon per hour pump on this, and so I need quite a bit of water output. Well, you can use just a single bit if you like to enlarge the holes with. Myself, I like to use this tapered bit I picked up from Harbor Freight there. It makes it very easy to enlarge holes just about any size that you want. I usually enlarge these to just about 1/4 of an inch. And then I try it out, and then if needs be, I'll enlarge them even a little bit more. Sometimes I'll make another water bar with 1/2 inch holes on it, so in case I'm not getting enough water out of this spray head, then I can swap it out with a 1/2 inch holes. Well, to start waterproofing, I like to tape off the top of the dowels with some painter's tape so that they don't get an overabundance of spray, and then start working on the troughs down in between. I like to take my little brush and some of this Titebond glue and brush inside the little troughs and give it about 3 good coats. Let it dry good in between, and then sand them down just slightly to get the rough edges off from them. After I do the glue, I like to spray this Helmsman spar varnish down inside there. Give it about 3 or 4 good coats. There's a lot of abrasive action going on down there when these sluices are working, so you want plenty of protection on there. Another thing is, if you use these quite a bit during the summer, you might want to periodically give them another good coat of spray or two during the summer. And give the slick plate especially, because the sand moving down in it will tend to wear this spar varnish off. On the side rails, I like to put some painting tape on the bottom edges of it there so I can make some marks. I like to mark these off, and the best place is to drill the holes for screwing it to the bottom part here. So this is just something I like to do. Well, I decided to go with the 1/2 inch holes after all. I think this will give me a little better water flow if I need to go full max of the pump there. None of the parts are glued so that you can take it apart and clean it periodically. So just press fit on all of them will work just fine. To turn this into a stream sluice, all you have to do is remove 4 screws and remove the header bar, and you're good to go. So you can spend the afternoon in the creek running dirt through it, and bring some home and set this up in your recirculating tub and run some more. So very versatile little units these are. For those who are interested, here's another way to do the water source. It's just an L on there. You may have to cut off the bottom bit of it to get a little space underneath there, but this also works quite well on the small sluices. On all my sluices, I put this little bar across there, and I put a 1/4 inch bolt through it. On the recirculating sluice, I just have a short bolt like this, and I have a larger hole drilled in the PVC tubing for that nut to fit down in through. On the stand that goes into the stream, I have a little longer bolt that fits on there, and so I can screw it right down to the actual stand. I usually drill the hole big enough for that nut to fit all the way down inside of it there. For the stream, I have these little PVC legs that I can put on it, and the bolt goes all the way through, and I can put a wing net on the bottom so that it's anchored right to these legs, and you can carry the whole setup as a one unit and set it up out into the stream. To test these things, I mixed about 2 grams of very fine gold, minus 30 down to minus 100, and I threw in about another 1.5 grams of coarse gold, and I made 8 runs on these. And at the end of the run, I would run all of the tailings over a miller table to see just how much gold was lost. Out of 8 runs, I have yet to find a single piece that made it through the sluice. So these things work very well, and they're very effective on the very fine gold too. Well, there you go, folks. I hope this has been of some interest to some of you folks for a fun project to build, maybe for scouts or a boys club or whatever. Anyway, if you want to see my intro, look in the description down there, and there will be a link to it, and it shows you a little more in detail on how to run these things and in the running on them. So I appreciate you all for watching, and as always, thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye now.